This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bishop. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. You know, I think our president right now is over in England, and I think it's like evening there. So anyway, wherever you are, welcome. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Thanks for being here again, George, and doing this with me.
Good morning, Dr. Marlene. In our time zone, always great to be with you.
Yes, thank you. Well, we are going to probably conclude our little mini series on the rules of co-parenting. And we're actually getting to the good ones. I mean, they're all good, they're all necessary, and it's essential information. But I sometimes think, you know, when people prepare um, documents like the materials that we use in the level 2 co-parenting class and things like that, that they kind of save the best till last, you know, either first or last, it seems like. And that's the case here. So I'm going to jump right in. Um, and I'm going to let you comment on these, George. But I think this one is one that most people don't ever think about, but it's crucially important. And what the concept is, or the principle, however you want to describe it, is all kids have rough times in their lives. And we know that, and we expect that. But the difference between intact families and divorced families or separated families is in intact families, the parents tend to support the child and they kind of come together to support the child. Okay, why did you do that? Why did you get suspended from school or expelled or fired from your job or got caught shoplifting or got caught with alcohol when you're underage? And they kind of work together on those types of issues. What we see a lot in divorced or separated families are parents using this opportunity to point fingers at or place blame on the other parent. Like, well, if you didn't drink every night when you got home from work, our daughter or son probably would not have got caught with alcohol. They wouldn't be drinking. There's more I want to say that I'm dying to say, but I'm going to let you jump in here and tell me just what you think of that. And then I've got a few things to say.
Well, I think it's important that parents are united as to their children,
Yeah.
regardless of whether they are at each other's throat. They need to be united as to their children, so the child or children don't pit one parent against the other and so forth. And these are the types of irritants that used to bring people to my office and say, let's file a contempt citation. And these that I call irritants are not really the types of things that judges are inclined. The judge is probably inclined to say, you know, you're a parent, be a parent.
Yes. Yes. And I'm guessing they come to your office because they want to file contempt because one parent didn't tell the other parent about it or something like that. Would that be
Yes,
accurate?
yes, absolutely. And it just is not the type of thing that a judge is going to get all hot and bothered about.
No, no, but that brings up a good point that I hadn't even thought about this morning yet. And that is that it is incumbent upon the parent who has the child when something like that happens, when they get in some kind of trouble, to inform the other parent. And this gets confusing in the co parenting materials because there's another item in a different handout that says each parent may get school and medical information pertaining to the child on their own. So you can contact the school, you can contact the medical provider. You don't need to rely on the other parent to tell you when Christmas break is, or spring break, or when school gets out in the spring or starts in the fall, any of those kinds of things. This is a little different because this is stuff that the other parent is not going to know if you don't tell them. And so you are required to tell them. And I can see where people would come into your office and say, he or she didn't tell me, that's in contempt. Let's go to court, let's file contempt. Yeah. And that doesn't go over well.
No, not at all. And the judges are really probably more irritated by something like that than they are inclined to punish a parent.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. Because part of you wants to just take care of the problem. Part of you probably wants to protect your child. You know, if they say, oh, please don't tell my dad, don't tell my dad, or don't tell my mom, you know, we want to honor that and protect them, but we have to tell the other parent. Well, a couple of things I have to say about it is, first of all, those kinds of things that I mentioned, shoplifting, underage drinking, things like that, those are peer related activities. And so when a parent blames the other parent, and what I mean by that is kids are almost always drinking with their friends. You know, they're 16, 17, somebody stole some alcohol out of their parents' liquor cabinet or whatever. And hey, meet me down at the park. I've got a bottle of whatever. And they do that with their friends. To blame the other parent is short sighted because the other parent typically has nothing to do with it or very little. But even if they do, even if the kid says, oh, yeah, you always look cool when you come home from work and grab this highball glass and pour yourself a drink, that looks cool. Even if that's the reason, which I doubt it is, it still doesn't help to point fingers and place blame and tell the other parent that if it weren't for you, Bobby wouldn't have done this because Bobby's going to do it with his friends if Bobby wants to do it, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's critical that parents understand. I think they probably understand, but they need to re-up their awareness that a child is going to manipulate and try to control the situation. And the more that parents are united, the less likely that's successful with the
Right.
child.
And that is a great segue to my next point, which is what you essentially do is allow the child to put the focus on one of you instead of him or her. Because now you're fighting with each other about whose fault it was. And you
Mhm.
just took the focus off of the child. So that's one thing. I mean, we don't want to allow the child to manipulate and take the focus off of them. But it also has a worse effect of now we're not dealing with getting the child the help they need. We're not addressing the issue with the child.
Yeah, I think that's critical when it comes to health and well-being of the child, and with things like underage drinking. The more united the parents can be, it seems to me, the better off the child's going to be because he or she is not going to be able to pit one parent against the other.
Right, right. And so that being a united front is crucially important. It's more important, I think. You can tell me what you think. I think it's more important in separated families than intact families.
I really wouldn't know for sure, but I would speculate that intact families are more likely to present a united front as far as the parents are concerned relative to the child or children. But I don't know that for sure because I don't get involved in that end of things.
Right. Yeah, you don't see it as much as I do. And I don't want to claim it when I haven't seen research to support that, but I'm pretty sure intact families, they might still fight about it or argue about it, but it's usually done in their room, in their privacy,
Mhm.
and not in front of the children. Whereas co parents don't have a choice. Well, they do, but they often don't utilize that choice because it's easier to just say it while you're there and the other parent is present and can't hang up on you or whatever the case may be.
Well, and there may be cultural issues. For example, in Europe, I know children drink wine fairly regularly. And so there may be a cultural issue here in the US, but it's probably pretty rare.
Right. Well, and another one I can think of that was very different from my church when I was growing up. My husband has told me and shown me his churches. It's a Catholic church. His church, when he was growing up, their beer garden. And when they would have summer activities and events, they had this beer garden that was open. And whoever it was, the men's group or whoever, I think made a lot of money off of for the church, for their causes that they supported and things like that. But they had a beer garden. And you sure wouldn't have seen that in the church I grew up in. And I don't know they were allowing kids to drink, but it was pretty clear that the church as a whole wasn't opposed to alcohol, whereas my church as a whole was, and is opposed to alcohol.
Yeah, I think those practices are born in the family or in what's left of the family. And so if you have
Right.
divergence in the parents on what's appropriate, they really need to try to be united, I think, for the child's benefit, feeling of safety and security, um, not feeling, gee, I can just run amok here. I think that's critical that parents are united like that, whether they're separated as a couple or not.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, either way you look at it, whether they are together or aren't, they need to be united. And another thing is, I hear parents say things, and I'm not going to pass judgment on this, but I hear them say things like, well, I'd rather they be in my care drinking than at the park or out around town or, God forbid, in their car driving when they're old enough. Well, I get that. But you still have to be a united front to say, hey, it's not legal, because they're still going to find themselves ending up in court with their child who has done something that they've now gotten ticketed for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of difficult to see divorced or separated parents brought together because of problems with their children. But many
Yes.
times I'd be in a courtroom and see just exactly that, where the parents are divorced
Mhm.
or separated. And that's what brought them together is the trouble that their child is in. That's kind
Yes.
of sad, but I've seen that on many occasions.
Yes. As have I. Yeah. Illnesses are another thing, when children, God forbid, have some kind of serious illness, parents will come together often. Or, like you said, when they get in trouble, like these scenarios that we're talking about. But more times than not, I would say, and of course, if I have to be on a case, the divorce is a high conflict divorce. But more times than not, what I see is the parents using it as a tactic to cast blame on the other parent and criticize them. And again, that isn't helping the child at all.
No, and I think you talk about high conflict divorces. Most of the cases that I see at least start out that way.
Right.
And sometimes the attorneys can turn the tide on that
Mhm.
and have it be more civil and more thoughtful, more oriented toward the children's welfare and benefit. But most of the cases that I see, at least when they would land in my office, the client is prepared for a fight. They're
Yes.
scared, they're angry, and they're prepared for a fight. And so
Yes.
we can do a service to try to de-escalate that a little bit and look at
Yes.
some alternatives.
Right. Right. Because using it to further the fight is not helpful.
No, and
And
especially doesn't benefit the children.
no, no. And like you said earlier, it bears repeating that judges aren't going to take this real seriously. I mean, not that they aren't going to care if a child got arrested, or I don't know that they arrest kids, but ticketed, whatever they do for underage drinking, but they don't want to see the parties in there for contempt because of that.
No, that's true. And the judges, I think most judges expect parents to approach their parenting, regardless of whether they're divorced or separated, with a sense of responsibility and a sense of civility.
Yes.
And that's really what I think most judges expect. And when they don't encounter that among the parents, they can be provoked. They can call both parents on the carpet, but they're really usually pretty judicious and careful about contempt punishments like incarceration.
Right. Right. Yes. Which is usually what the other parent is asking for.
Right.
It just amazes me how parents can think that putting the other parent in jail is a good idea.
Well, once in a while, it's the only thing that gets somebody's attention.
That is
And
true.
it's unfortunate, but it is true that once in a while you have a person whose personality lends themselves to paying attention only when they are under the thumb of authority. Uh, it's too bad, but it happens.
Hmm.
And that person is not likely to reform their behavior or their attitude, even if they've done a short jail term.
Right. That's right. All that's going to do is perpetuate the anger.
Right, right. And
You and I have
actually
seen
ramp
that.
it up.
Right. Right. It definitely ramps it up. And boy, that parent gets out of jail, even if, like you said, it's for a short period of time. I have seen parents get out of jail and it ruined their weekend. I mean, it might have been 2 days, but you ruined my weekend. And now, boy, you talk about ramping up the conflict. Ooh,
Yeah, and for most people that don't have a lot of involvement with the criminal justice system, a little bit of jail is very intimidating. It's
yes,
and so there can be a lot of resentment and a lot of backlash because of that.
yes, yes, for sure. Well, we've got another rule or two to go over today before we close this out, but it's time for a quick break. So we will do that. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we're talking about the rules of co-parenting, and I think we exhausted that one pretty well. So thank you for discussing that in detail with me, George.
My pleasure, Dr. Marlene.
Oh, thanks. Well, the next one, and this is one where I'm sure I've dealt with it more than what you have, but I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've dealt with it. I'm sure you've got a few things to say about it. And that is, children have things they want to do with other children. And the other children might be friends or family of the other parent. And the court's expectation is that co-parents be flexible with their parenting time to allow, for example, and I'm going to tell you a story here. This one comes with a story, but to allow a child to go to a cousin on the other side's birthday party. And that's what happened to me. I mean, it's been years ago, but I had a dad, it happened to be dad this time, who would not let the child in third grade go to her cousin's on mom's side birthday party. And the little girl was devastated. And they came into my office on a Monday after this cousin had had a sleepover birthday party. It was a slumber party for her birthday party. And that day at school, all the other little girls in their class were talking about how much fun they did and how late they stayed up and the things they did to tease each other and games they played too. And this little girl walked in and sat down. Well, she wouldn't sit down. That was first thing. She wouldn't sit down. She didn't want to sit next to her dad. I don't want to be that close to him right now. I'm angry. And she's got tears streaming down her cheeks. And so, when a kid comes in crying, it's pretty significant. And I share that because parents will downplay this. And all I have to say is you will ruin your relationship with your child when you don't allow them to go to things like that. Because this little girl was going to be mad for a long time. That was her best friend. It was her cousin. She was in the same class at school with her. And yet dad, because it was mom's family, would not let her go to the birthday party. And what's worse, George, is I asked dad, well, did you do something with her over the weekend so that she wasn't just sitting there thinking about how she's missing the party? And he said, well, no, actually, we just had a quiet weekend at home. Well, that's probably not a good plan. Parents should at least, I think, you can tell me what you think, should at least have the foresight to see if you're going to disappoint your child because you're not going to allow an activity with other children for whatever reason, at least have something else planned unless they're in trouble. If this is a punishment and they don't get to go to something because they've misbehaved, and that's their punishment, that's their consequence, that's different. But if you just don't want to let them go because, as dad said, I don't want to be anywhere near those people, and kept calling them mom's family, those people, which I have an issue with also, then that's what you're going to get is a child who's resentful, angry, doesn't want to sit down next to you. In fact, she didn't want to have a whole lot of anything to do with dad for a while. So I'm going to let you comment on that one.
Well, I don't actually get involved in that
Yeah.
end of things until they're extreme.
Yes.
And if there's extreme behavior on the part of a parent, I'm going to have a client in my office, or I would have had a client in my office saying, do something. And I say, well, my options are limited. Let's talk about those. And what are the consequences of invoking any of those remedies? And I think those are long conversations that attorneys need to have with their clients before they file contempt.
Yes. And I mean, I hate to make the case for my services, but this is where having a PCDM on your case can be invaluable because I can address that issue in a heartbeat. But your remedy for court is to wait to go back to court and then bring something in that most judges are going to view as being petty. Like they don't want to get that involved in the day in, day out activities and happenings of your lives.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think attorneys are well served to try to inform their clients of the potential backlash of a contempt citation. And I think that's significant and needs to be considered before running off to court and filing that.
Mm-hmm.
The attorney needs to have a discussion with the client about what are the potential repercussions of doing that, as well as the potential benefits. And the potential benefits are usually pretty limited.
Right. Right. And that's a really good point you make, George, because it's one thing to go into court and lose your contempt action. It's a whole other thing to get scolded by the judge. And we talked about this, I think, just a few weeks ago, that often what you've really done when that happens is empowered the other parent. Now they're going to think, okay, not only did I not get in trouble, but you did. And so they're going to do those kinds of things even more.
I think that's true, and the backlash from a contempt citation can be significant. It rarely, once in a while, it softens somebody and they start to toe the line on being
Mhm.
cooperative and reasonable with their co-parenting. But it's pretty rare and usually hardens the heart of that person so that they're going to act out every chance they get if they think they can get away with it.
Right, right. And that's why knowing the rules of co parenting and proactively handling these things in the right way is invaluable. Because when a parent knows, hey, the court kind of expects you to be flexible with your parenting time and let that child go with the other parent. And it may not even have to be with the other parent, but go to that birthday party or whatever it is of someone that is a friend or family member of the other parent. Let them do it for 2 hours. What's the harm? And to say, I don't want to be around those people, you don't have to be. Let the other parent come pick them up, drop them off curbside of the house where the party is happening, or Chuck E. Cheese, or whatever. But parents just don't realize that this stuff's not going to be viewed favorably or with any kind of understanding. A court's not going to understand. If a parent thinks I'm going to go into court and the judge is going to understand that I didn't want to be around my ex in laws, no, he's not, or she. They're not going to understand that.
No, and I had the opportunity last week to pick up and drop off a teacher at a high school. And
Mm-hmm.
so driving amongst high school students was scary enough, but
Yes,
I can understand how a parent could be late doing that. And if a parent is late because of the congestion at the high school or whatever it might be, and it's only half an hour or less, that's not something that a judge is going to get all upset about. They
no,
understand that things happen and there are traffic issues and weather issues depending on where someone lives. And they're just not going to get upset about that enough to incarcerate somebody.
right, right. They're really not. And parents don't get that. They seem to think that these orders are crucially important, and they are important, but not to the extent that the judge wants to see you, hear about it, potentially place a parent in jail. I mean, they're not going to micromanage your lives.
No, and the sooner parents get that in their brain, the better off it is. Because, first of all, it takes a long time. There's a lapse of time between the offense or the perceived offense and even getting into court. And so, who knows what's
Right.
happened in between the time that the alleged offense has happened and the time they get to court. Usually, things do not get better on their own.
No,
And
no.
the I think the PCDM road is much better road to go down. It's much more effective way to co-parent rather than having the court or expecting the judge to be the referee.
Right. And it's pretty immediate. Like, I might not make a decision today, but I'll have a decision made by tomorrow or the next day. And if you're waiting to get into court, it might be weeks or months, usually months.
Yeah, typically my experience was months. It's usually 2 or 3 months to get a hearing date for a contempt
Yeah.
citation.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's what people don't realize. And also, I can't emphasize this enough, and we've talked about it before, but there's got to be an established pattern, and it's got to be egregious. And I'm sure you would agree with that. Uh-oh, George, I think you're frozen or I lost you. Oh, there, you're moving again. No,
I
I think
think
I lost you for a minute. Yeah,
we froze for a minute there.
yes. But would you agree it's got to be a pattern and it's got to be fairly egregious?
Yeah, absolutely. A contempt citation is a remedy which needs to be used sparingly, I guess is the word I would use. And it if you have a particularly recalcitrant parent, once in a while a contempt citation is a last resort, which it should be,
Hmm.
and it helps. But so I'm not saying that contempt citations are never appropriate. There are
Right.
times when they are appropriate, but it's a sad situation. It should be approached with regret
Hmm.
and temperance in how it's approached. But the contempt citation road is oftentimes not as effective. The effect of the contempt citation prosecution is not what the parent envisioned
Right.
when they brought the contempt citation, and so they often regret having done so.
Yes. Yes. Yes, talk about having regret and remorse. If you're that parent who gets scolded by the judge for being in there, boy, you're not going to do that again.
No, no,
And
no.
something, oh, go ahead.
It costs a lot of time, money, and emotion to prosecute a contempt citation on both
Yes,
sides. And
yes,
so a few minutes with your PCDM I think is a lot more preferable road to go down than to jump to a contempt citation.
Right. I agree. And another piece of this that I'm not sure you have to deal with a lot, but I'd love to hear what you think. I get parents who say, we're talking a 2 hour, maybe 3 hour birthday party from the time they leave until the time they get back. And you get parents who say, I want that time back. I want to make up that time because they went with the other parent. Now, if they didn't go with the other parent, but just went to a birthday party, you're not going to get that time back because there's no one to get it back from. But if it does involve the other parent in any way, I often have parents who want that time back. Okay, if you need to trade 2 hours in the afternoon on a Saturday or a Sunday or whenever, fine. I mean, if that's what we have to do to make it happen, fine. To me, that's petty. And a little bit of goodwill goes a long way. And what I routinely see happen, sometimes quicker and easier than other times, but eventually it will happen, is what you give to that parent, they're going to give back to you. So if you give them 2 hours, 3 hours to take the child to a birthday party, there and not expect anything back in return, they're going to give you the same thing when you need it. That just tends to be the way it goes. And like I said, I know you don't have to deal with that a lot, but would you agree that that's kind of the tone we set, is either one of cooperation and collaboration or not?
Yeah, and my favorite story in that regard is about your letting your ex take your son for skiing on your time.
Yes, that's one of my favorites too. Because then when I really needed it, because we were going out of state to a family celebration, I got it, and may not have gotten it had I not been as cooperative as I was. But it makes my point very clear. It drives the point home that what you give is what you'll get. What you put out is what comes back to you. And I have parents argue this with me every day. I mean, it's tiring. You can probably tell or hear in my voice that it's tiring because I have parents every day who say, you don't know my ex, though, and my ex will never give back. Your ex is human like everyone else. They are eventually going to do what most people do, and that is to reciprocate. Again, it might take time, it might not be tomorrow, but it will happen. And they
I
just
think
have to
that's
trust me.
been what I've observed, and I only
Yes.
get to observe. I beg your pardon? I only get
No,
to
I just,
observe those behaviors from a, or it's reported to me by my client, and then the question is my client an accurate reporter,
right.
and are they? So that's a big deal too.
Yes. Yes, it is. And I'm glad that you pointed that out because a lot of attorneys take their client's word as gospel. If my client said it, it happened, and it happened just the way they said.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times that doesn't turn out to be true.
No, that's absolutely the case, and so we have to try to filter what the client's perception is from what really happened, and
Right.
sometimes they're not the same.
Right. Right. And again, I'm glad you, as an attorney, acknowledge that because a lot of attorneys, and I don't know if they really believe it, but they act like what their client says is the factual truth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and it's not it's a perception issue a lot of times.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well, it's time to take another quick break, so we will do so. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We are closing out our little mini series here on the rules of co-parenting. And I have an overall statement that I think we really need to make here, George. And that is, I mean, if there's one takeaway that I want people to get from learning and knowing and observing the rules of co-parenting, it would be this: that you are not going to have much control at all over what happens at the other parent's house and in the other parent's care when your children are with them, in other words. And parents just don't accept that. They have a hard time accepting that. And they think that they somehow still have some kind of say-so about what happens in the other parent's house. And again, I'm going to punt to you, but address this one.
Well, I think that's that control issue again. And it's particularly common where there was a primary caretaker parent. And that parent suddenly loses some of that control. And I think they find it very difficult to let go like that. But one of the basic tenets, I think, of co-parenting is treat that other parent how you would like to be treated in that situation.
Amen. Amen. The golden rule is all you need here is treat the other parent the way you want to be treated. I mean, that's really it.
It really is. And it would eliminate a lot of people who would have come to my office if they would have just followed that rule.
Yes. Yes. But some people are just so hurt, angry, resentful, maybe feel betrayed, whatever they're feeling. And some people get over it quicker than others. Some hold on to that anger and bitterness and resentment for years, like years.
Well, and almost universally, when I would see people in my office, there would be two characteristics that were common, and that is anger and fear.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
different people act out differently when they're angry and afraid, or angry or afraid. But it's very difficult, I think, for people going through divorce or separation to accept the changes and the roles that they're going to have to assume once the divorce or separation is completed.
Yes. And I don't think they realize what they're bargaining for, you know, when they separate. And I've even had people tell me, people who are still with their the other parent, and they'll say, I could never go through a divorce with my children's mother or father because I would not be able to be away from them and not know what's happening and not have any say so over it. And if that kept them together, great. That's great. But you have parents who recognize that. You have others who think it becomes a we situation, me and the children are going to boot you to the curb and we're going to go on, like we were before. And that's not going to happen.
No, that's definitely not going to happen. And sometimes the shock that I used to see on people's faces when they were the primary caretaker parent and their
Mhm.
role is going to be reduced in that regard. And they were just
Yes.
shocked by that.
Right. Right. And even now, when I try to explain to parents, and I mean, not just when they first separate, but on down the road a little ways. And I try to explain and beat into their brains because they just don't accept it that you don't have any say so about most things while the children are with the other parent. I just can't get that through to them.
Yeah, the control, the desire to control, it doesn't extinguish easily. I think it's very difficult for a parent who's been a primary caretaker to have that role abbreviated, especially when the children are with the other parent. They can't intrude into that household any more than they would like to be intruded upon.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And if the children are in danger in some way, that's one thing. But we've talked about this before too, George, and it bears repeating also that endangerment by the court's standard is very different than what you and I might think of, or the parents we work with might think of as endangerment. A lot of times, bad parenting and even very bad parenting is what the parent is referring to as endangerment, but it often doesn't rise to that level. And so until it does, you're not going to have any say so about what's going on with the other parent.
No, the court is looking for significant emotional impairment or
Yes.
physical endangerment in those cases. And it's a very high evidentiary standard to meet.
Yes. Yes. And some of the things, and this is just a short list, but just to give our parents examples of what kind of things we're talking about that you'll have no control over, are things like, and I got my little list right here with me, things like chores, allowances, television watching, video games, bedtimes, homework, food, clothing. Those are things that you don't have any say so over. If they get fast food every meal, the court is not going to care. Or the example I use of when a court is going to care is if it's a diabetic child and you're feeding them sugar, then sure, the court's going to care. Short of something like that, they are not going to care. And same with television watching and video games. If there is a parent allowing children to play age inappropriate video games or things like that, then the court might care, especially if that child is behaving aggressively at school now and it's a change in behavior and the parent has been letting them watch or play things they shouldn't, then the court might care. But again, short of things like that, it's up to each parent what things their kids get to watch on TV and all of that.
Yeah, I think that's true, and it's sometimes very, very difficult for certain parents to accept that.
Hmm.
They are just determined to have input or control when the children are with the other parent, and it just doesn't work.
No, no, no. And the sooner they realize that, the better off they'll be. And I have suggestions for parents too, because I have parents who ask me, do you have a suggestion for how I can let go? Yes, get yourself involved in something, somewhere, whatever that may be. It might be a book club, it might be going to a gym, it might be just joining some organization and getting real involved with that. But you've got to preoccupy yourself and not have your world centered around your children, because when they aren't with you, then you're not going to have a world.
No, and I think more places nowadays offer what I refer to as the divorce recovery workshop,
Yes,
and that can
yes.
be very helpful and very valuable.
Yes, and especially the ones I often see them offered through churches. And I think those are good because they're not going to suggest things like go hang out at the bar, you know, because you don't want to do unhealthy things either. And I've seen parents do that.
No, that's not helpful either.
Right, right. For sure, it's not. Well, it's hard to believe that our time is up, but once again, it is. But thank you for being here and doing this with me, George.
Always a pleasure, Dr. Marlene. Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, you bet. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.